being here today. I've been struck over the last several months by the effort of some to create the impression that when and if this bill is proclaimed and implemented, that we will suddenly have a problem with cannabis on our hands. All of us in the room know that that isn't the case, that this is a piece of legislation that is responsive to a problem that we have with cannabis today. So it's a simple question for you, Mr. Blair. What are the consequences of not legalizing and strictly regulating cannabis in Canada?
I think, Senator, the evidence is overwhelming that the current system of cannabis control in this country is failing. It's failing us on many fronts. Most importantly, it's failing us for our children. And I think the evidence is overwhelming and compelling and conclusive. That, you know, we have among the highest rates in the world of cannabis use for our kids. And it's not just the health risks of that cannabis that our kids are using. First of all, the cannabis itself is untested, unregulated, unsafe, contain chemicals unfit for human consumption. We know that the earlier that they begin to use, the more frequently they use, and the higher potency of what they use, the greater the risks for their health and for their outcomes. We also know that they're buying it from criminals. And so it's exposing our children to a criminal element that young people should never be exposed to. Because they're operating outside the law, in their own mind, they're defining themselves as outside the law. And that's also not good socialization for our kids. We also know that 100% of the market, its production and its distribution, is a criminal enterprise. They don't follow any law. They don't obey any rule. They're not accountable in any way. There's no oversight. There's no governance. There's no testing. They operate in the dark. And they make money. The easiest money they ever made. I ran large organized crime, drug crime units in Toronto for many years. The money they make in cannabis is the easiest money organized crime makes. There's no competition for them in the marketplace. Canadian society generally does not see this as a serious criminal activity, and they control 100% of it. There's no competition. And so it works out to about $20 million a day flowing into criminal enterprise in this country. And so the price of leaving that, we're leaving the health and safety of our children in the hands of criminals. We're allowing criminals to make enormous profit. And the sad reality is you cannot regulate a prohibited substance. As long as that criminal prohibition remains in place, there is no way that we can ever get control over its production, control over its distribution, or affect reasonable regulations that control its consumption. And so cannabis is a serious problem in the workplace today. But it's very difficult for an employer to regulate that behavior because it's criminally prohibited. It's a difficult conversation for parents, teachers, and health professionals to have with their kids about the risks of cannabis today. Because how do you talk to your kids about committing a criminal act in a socially responsible or less risky way? And so it's only by lifting that prohibition that we actually can get control of this situation. I think it's a very responsible approach. And for those who focus on the government of Canada is merely legalizing cannabis, they're completely missing the story here. Because the story is we're lifting that prohibition to effect a comprehensive and effective system of regulatory control over production, distribution of cannabis and consumption of cannabis in this country that's going to create safer communities and healthier communities. And it will, over time, displace that illicit market and give Canadian adults a healthier, lower risk, more socially responsible choice. I'm confident they'll make that choice once we make it available to them.
Thank you.